Skeletons of the Marital Closet. By Tang. Chapter 2011. Mommy is number 1, Nicole is second, and Grandpa and Grandma are tied for third, and Joshua trailed off. Shawn raised an eyebrow. I'm not even in the top 3? You barely make 5th. 4th is Great Grandpa, Joshua replied. Just because you bought me a star. Thank you so much. You're welcome, Shawn. By this calculation, Uncle Orem ranks 6th. Shawn let out a cold laugh. In your heart, he's just behind Meme. For now, that's the order. You need to work hard and strive to get into the top 3. Keep it up, Joshua said, patting Shawn on the shoulder. Shawn did not even glance at him and walked straight into the living room. Gale watched this scene with amazement. You two are so oddly affectionate today. Did your relationship suddenly improve? Joshua eagerly wrapped an arm around Shawn's neck. We just collaborated on something big. What big thing? Shawn suddenly coughed twice. Secret, can't tell you. Joshua quickly changed his tune. Gale was not fooled and kept examining the two of them. Looks like you two have a little secret. Should I be happy or unhappy about this? The usual bickering pair were now on the same side. Shawn coughed twice more. What's wrong? Shawn, I didn't say anything. Why are you still coughing to hint at me? Joshua asked, confused. Shawn was speechless. His throat was itchy, and he could not help it. This cough had been bothering him for a while, but at least he was not coughing up blood anymore. Gale gestured. Your daddy used to smoke a lot. Now he's got a cough. Don't catch his germs. Joshua reluctantly jumped off Shawn. He ran over to Nicole. Nicole, I have a question for you. Ask away, brother. In your heart, where does Uncle Orem rank? Nicole looked at him curiously. Why are you asking about Uncle Orem all of a sudden? It was because Shawn suddenly asked about him, and Joshua was curious to know Nicole's thoughts. Oh, never mind that. Just answer my question. Nicole tilted her head, thinking hard, and started counting on her fingers. Mommy first, Daddy second, you third. What? I'm only third in your heart? Joshua exclaimed. Yeah, third is fine, it's not about the ranking. But why am I behind Shawn? Shawn is second. Joshua said. Joshua was deeply shaken at this moment. In his heart, his dear little sister was second, just after his precious mommy. However, in his sister's heart, he was third and placed behind Shawn. Joshua could tolerate being third, but he could not accept that the person in second was Shawn. Shawn smiled, quite pleased. Good job, Nicole. You really are Daddy's little girl. Chapter 2012. Shawn looked at Joshua again. Now do you understand how I felt when you ranked me 5th? 5th was bad enough, but he was so reluctant to even place him there, and even ranked Orem directly behind him. Ha! Now with Nicole's help, Shawn had taken sweet revenge, delivering a blow that left Joshua reeling. Joshua clutched his chest dramatically, feigning distress. It's okay. Nicole, go on. Nicole blinked, puzzled. Joshua, is this ranking so hard to accept? Usually, parents are ranked 1st and 2nd. Nicole tried to comfort him. If you want to be second in my heart, you can be. A glimmer of hope sparked in Joshua's eyes. Daddy and Mommy can share the 1st place, and you can be second, Nicole said happily. How about that? Joshua was speechless. What was so great about that? He was still behind Shawn. Nicole looked at Shawn, confused. Daddy, what's wrong with Joshua? She was a bit uneasy. Nothing, don't worry about him. So Nicole, who's 4th in your heart? Shawn said gently, patting her head. Grandfather, great-grandfather, and grandmother share 4th place, Nicole replied. They are all equally important, so they go together. Uncle Orem can share 5th place with godfather and godmother. Joe and Summer were very important to Nicole too. Hearing this, Joshua clutched his chest again. Nicole, trying to console him, said, Joshua, you're still more important than them. I grew up with you. We spend every day together, in the same kindergarten, in the same class, and we are always together. But Shawn? He's not been our daddy for long, and he's already outranked me? Joshua said, heartbroken. He had ranked Nicole 2nd earlier. Now he wanted to change his ranking. Gale watched their debate with a smile. She knew that no matter what, in both Joshua and Nicole's hearts, she was always number 1. No one could surpass her position. Nicole replied, Daddy treats me very well, he never scolds me. But you always scold me and argue with me. Joshua sighed dramatically. Gale, sitting next to Shawn, nudged his shoulder playfully. So, you asked Joshua who's most important in his heart? Yes. The kids both answered and gave their rankings. What about you, how do you rank in your heart? Gale said. Shawn pulled her into his arms. Gale, in our hearts, you are always first, always. Your first place is unbeatable. She leaned happily against his chest. Yes. I'm so incredibly happy, surrounded by 3 people who love me so much. It's like my world revolves around MME. She lifted her head to kiss his lips. Shawn, no matter what happens, nothing can or will separate us. We've been through so many storms and come through everyone. The rest of our lives will be endless peace and happiness. He smiled and kissed her back. Ah. Nicole covered her eyes with her hands. Daddy and Mommy are kissing again. Chapter 2013. Joshua turned away. Here we go again with the PDA, Think of us single folks. Gale laughed as she leaned into Shawn's embrace. Home felt so warm. This was what a complete and harmonious family looked like. No matter what challenges they faced outside, their home was filled with love and joy. Darkness and hatred had no place in this happy family. Oh, by the way, when you came back you barely stepped inside before leaving again. Joshua said it was an emergency meeting at the company? Gale said, lifting her head from Shawn's chest. Yes, that's right. What was so urgent on a weekend? Shawn raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Wood is suddenly curious about my work? Am I not allowed to care? Of course you can. After all, you are the major shareholder of Wood Group. I work for you and have an obligation to report to you anytime. You also have the right to inquire, Shawn replied. Gale laughed and tried to cover his mouth. You and your smooth talk. I'm serious. Shawn grasped her wrist, kissing it gently. Gale, come to my office on Monday. We'll sign a contract in the presence of a lawyer. What kind of contract? A share transfer agreement? Gale looked at him, puzzled. Didn't I already sign one? The shares you gave to Nicole are under my name now, held in trust until she turns 18. I'll transfer them to her then. Those were just grandfather's shares and part of mine. The contract we'll sign on Monday is for... Shawn said. Gale gasped. All your shares? Yes. She was taken aback and felt something was off. Why would Shawn suddenly decide to transfer control of Wood Group to her for no apparent reason? Yet, she could not pinpoint what was wrong because she trusted him completely. Why? Whether the shares are under my name or yours, it's all the same, isn't it? What's yours is mine, and what's mine is yours. We aren't calculative, Gale asked. Shawn tightened his arms around her. Exactly. What's mine is yours, so giving it to you doesn't change anything or cause any consequences. But these shares are very valuable. Why are you treating them like toys, giving them away so casually? He smiled. Don't you want to be my boss? Even though this was a very serious and formal matter, Shawn discussed it casually with Gale, as if they were talking about the weather or what to eat today. Because of Shawn's relaxed demeanor, Gale also started to feel more at ease. However, the shares were worth a fortune. Once the contract was in effect, Gale would become the largest shareholder of Wood Group. As someone with that magnitude of influence, she would top the list of female billionaires. Being your wife is enough for me. Who cares about being a boss? You earn the money, and I stay beautiful. Isn't that enough? Gale said. Sure, I'll earn it all for you. Having it in your account is even more secure, right? Chapter 2014, I even know your bank account password. Gale frowned, feeling uneasy. Shawn, be honest with me, stop kidding around. Are you doing this because something happened? Or are you trying to prevent something in the future? She said, pulling his earlobe gently. Shawn knew that such a sudden move would raise suspicions. Being evasive was not a solution. He glanced at their 2 children, one watching cartoons, the other tirelessly working on a Rubik's Cube. It was a happy and heartwarming scene. Shawn cherished these moments with his family of 4, he wanted to enjoy this kind of life forever, and feared losing it. Shawn lowered his head onto her shoulder. The Wood family has always been complex. Gale was taken aback. Since returning to Sea City with the children, she and Shawn had not discussed the Wood family in such seriousness. She asked, Shawn, your stepmother and your stepbrother no longer pose any threat. Now the main figures in the Wood family are your father, you, me, and our 2 children. How could there be any hidden danger in that? We have many relatives in the Wood Group, distant relatives and connections all on the board of directors, Shawn said. So what? Gale asked. Shawn's throat tightened. After a few silent moments he replied, If one day something unexpected happens to me and I become incapacitated or suddenly pass away. Shawn. Gale's heart trembled, a wave of panic washing over her. Why would you say such ominous things? Ugh. He gently brushed her hair, his tone calming. Let me finish, Gale. Shawn sighed softly. I'm just saying, I don't care, Shawn, there's no need for such talk. She was scared. She could not bear to imagine life without Shawn. Gale looked into his eyes. You know, I used to be very independent, strong-willed and proud. I'd rather suffer alone than ask others for help. I was used to facing everything on my own, always bearing the burden alone. But you always told me I have you. I don't need to put up walls. You said all a woman needs to do is stand by her man. Oh, give me reliance, you give me a shoulder, you create a safe harbor for me. Slowly I've let go of that toughness, sought refuge in your arms and started accepting your help, being the woman by you. Shielding you from the storms. Now that I've fully adapted to this life, needing you, relying on you. You suddenly tell me, Mum. Gale's voice choked with tears. She felt like crying, but she should not. What was there to cry about? Shawn had truly spoiled her all this while. Chapter 2015. She had been indulged for so long that she had developed a slight temper. She could not bear even the slightest grievance now, almost on the verge of tears. This was not the Gale everyone knew. Shawn had spoiled her into becoming pampered and fragile. In the past, Gale had thought being too delicate was not good, she needed to be independent and strong. Now, she realized that being cherished and spoiled for a lifetime was a blessing. Sniffling, Gale forcefully held back her tears. Shawn, of course, noticed the tremor in her voice. His heart clenched painfully. It hurt. Seeing her cry pained him more than anything. Silly. Shawn kissed her gently on the corner of her eye. I was just talking hypothetically with you. It's not real. Hypothetical talk is not allowed. Do you rely on me, that mooch? He pinched her nose lightly. My Gale, you used to never cry so easily. Now you shed tears at the drop of a hat, you're even more fragile than Nicole. It's all because you've spoiled Mem? Shawn nodded helplessly and indulgently. Yes, it's my fault. Don't cry, Gale, be good. He coaxed her softly, his words filled with tenderness and patience. She was his beloved woman, the apple of his eye. He would give his life for her willingly. After Gale finally calmed down, Shawn continued, Gale, what I want to tell you is that I'm transferring all the shares to you to prevent any power struggles within Wood Group if something were to happen to me. Though the likelihood of that happening is very low, he emphasized. Under Shawn's leadership, Wood Group flourished, and he had placed many trusted aides in crucial positions. Joe was also there. Joe was his friend, he never betrayed him, and was never blinded by self-interest. But low probability doesn't mean it's impossible. I'm the president of Wood Group, with many eyes on me. If something were to happen, many would rush to take advantage, Shawn went on. By transferring the shares to you, this situation won't arise. The shares belong to you, and no one can take them away or divide them. When Joshua and Nicole grow up, you can transfer them to them. Gale understood Shawn's intention now. He had a long-term vision. For a large enterprise, a great family, long-term planning was necessary. She sniffled and nodded. I understand what you're thinking. It's just when you suddenly mention leaving, the possibility of something happening unexpectedly, I instinctively resist. She could not accept a future life without him. He had to always be there. I'm just being cautious. Not just me. Ask any CEO of a major company like Sam or anyone else. They all think the same way. Gale, it's a normal thought because no one knows which will come first, tomorrow or an accident, Shawn replied. Perhaps an accident was already quietly brewing, preparing to catch him off guard. And Gale, with the shares in your name, you'll live worry-free for the rest of your life. Even if I leave, you can rest assured that you'll have more than enough money to live a very good life. Chapter 2016. No, you're being too pessimistic. Gale shook her head repeatedly. We will be very happy together, and grow old watching Joshua and Nicole grow up, get married, and have children. We'll be an old man and old lady together. She nudged his nose. I already have silver hair. Do I look like an old man? Not at all, you don't. Shawn chuckled softly. Gale wrapped her arms around his neck, feeling anxious despite his assurances, as if he might leave at any moment. She wanted to hold on to him, to feel his presence. You said you're afraid something might happen to you, so you've transferred all the shares to me. Aren't you worried something might happen to me? Gale asked. Don't say silly things, I will protect you. But what if, hypothetically? Gale shrugged, using his words against him. Isn't that what you just said? We're both human, accidents can happen unexpectedly in the future. Shawn replied, gaily, haven't you forgotten, I am the president of Wood Group? If something happens to you, I can completely control all risks and handle everything. But if something happens to me, can you handle it? Truth be told, when it comes to managing a company, Gale could not compare to Shawn. In fact, in all of Sea City there was no one who could compare. He was a commercial prodigy who rose to fame in his youth, the head of the Wood family, and the CEO who propelled Wood Group into a billion-dollar conglomerate. With him around, no difficulty was insurmountable, but without him, Wood Group would briefly fall into a state of chaos. All right, you always have your reasons one after another. I can't argue with you, Gale muttered back. You don't need to argue with me, just love me. Do I even need to say tat? Gale raised her eyebrows. Of course, I love you, just as much as you love me. I love you, very much more than you love me. No, Shawn, I love you just as much if not more. Now, she never questioned Shawn's love for her. She knew he was there, always. Though they had talked things through, Gale's worries had not completely dissipated. She understood Shawn's actions stemmed from careful consideration, preparing for unforeseen accidents in the future. Gale still felt a bit uneasy. Before going to sleep, she nestled into Shawn's arms, holding him tight, unwilling to let go. Shawn enjoyed her rare initiative. What's wrong? Nothing, just wanted to hold you. Couldn't sleep tonight? Gale poked his chest. Can't you think of anything else besides that tonight? I've already thought about everything else during the day. Gale hummed softly, finding the most comfortable position in his arms, slowly closing her eyes. Shawn. Yais? I love you so much, I didn't know before that I could love someone so much. She purred sleepily. I love you too. It was so precious to receive a loving response so quickly. Some people live their whole lives, never experiencing it. Chapter 2017. In the CEO's office of Wood Group, the lawyer arrived early and meticulously reviewed contracts with Shawn, confirming each clause with him one by one. It was crucial to double-check everything because it involved billions of assets within the group. I won't keep a single share under my name. Transfer them all to my wife, Shawn said calmly. Mr. Wood, should we add a clause where Mrs. Wood holds the shares on behalf of Master Joshua and Miss Nicole, to be transferred to them once they reach adulthood? The lawyer asked cautiously. Maybe not, Shawn replied. The lawyer could not help but advise, Mr. Wood, to be safe, I strongly recommend adding it. Just in case, hypothetically. This task was difficult, and the lawyer was clearly uneasy. If Mrs. Wood divorces you in the future, all these shares will belong solely to her, and you won't get anything. Are you sure about unconditionally transferring everything to Mrs. Wood? Who could guarantee lifelong fidelity and no change of heart? And hypothetically, if Mrs. Wood remarries and has children, then these shares would potentially have more claimants, the lawyer continued. After speaking, the lawyer waited quietly for Shawn's response. He repeated calmly and confidently, she won't. Mr. Wood, never test human nature. His voice grew stern. Enough said. The lawyer immediately fell silent, though his expression still showed concern. Shawn understood the lawyer's perspective. He was protecting Shawn's interests. In truth, Shawn understood it all too well. He trusted Gale so completely that any hint of betrayal would mean losing everything irreparably. He knew his Gale was not that kind of woman. Go with my plan. Whatever consequences arise, I'll take responsibility. You're not accountable, Shawn said calmly. Yes, Mr. Wood. At that moment, Joe also arrived. What's going on that I'm being summoned here? Oh, even the lawyer's here, Joe asked lazily, yet his spirit was sharp. Mr. Winter. Joe glanced at the contract in the lawyer's hand. A transfer of shares? You're giving shares to Gale again? You seem worried about not treating her well. How much are you giving her this time? All of them. What? Joe stood up in shock. All of them? What did that even mean? Gale would immediately become the top female billionaire in the world. Shawn, calm down, calm down. How big of a mistake did you make to need to appease Gale with this much money? Joe said. Shawn remained composed. Stop speculating. But besides this reason, I can't think of another. What's mine is hers, and what's hers is mine. Ultimately, it's all for Joshua and Nicole. With her name on it, it'll be easier for her to transfer it to our 2 children in the future. It's all the same, Shawn replied. Joe wanted to say more, but Shawn raised his hand to stop him. It's settled, I have my reasons. Chapter 2018. Saying this, Shawn glanced at the time on his watch. Gale will be here soon. Don't say anything suspicious in front of her. She's perceptive and tends to overthink, got it? Joe sighed repeatedly. I've seen men dote on their wives but never like you. If you marry Summer, would you do the same as I did? Shawn asked. Joe nodded. I would. Then what else is there to say? Shawn left Joe speechless with his logical retort. Footsteps could be heard outside the door. They were soft and gentle, so everyone could tell it was Gale. Shawn nudged Joe with his foot, and gestured with his eyes. Okay, I get it. Joe nodded repeatedly. Don't worry, I'll be tactful. Shawn replied softly, that's for the best. As Gale walked in through the door, she smiled. Oh? So many people here, Joe and Sonny. Mrs. Wood, I've drafted all the terms of this contract, so I needed to sync up with Mr. Wood. Since he's fine with it, please review the contract. Sonny, the lawyer, greeted her. Gale took it. She could tell from its weight that it was an extensive contract. She glanced through it, encountering numerous technical terms and jargon that were challenging to grasp. Flipping through a few more pages, she felt overwhelmed. She had no experience in this area. Shawn, do I just need to sign? Yes, he confirmed. Gale nodded. Pass me the pen. Sonny hesitated for a moment before Joe handed Gale a pen from his suit pocket. Sonny snapped out of his daze. Sorry, Mrs. Wood. It's okay. I know drafting contracts is tough work. Thank you for your trouble. Gale signed her name swiftly. In his mind, Sonny sighed repeatedly. In all his years, he had only seen siblings who split everything to the teacouples who often wanted different things, prioritizing their own interests. He had never seen a couple of Mr. Wood and Mrs. Wood's stature to behave this way. Shawn insisted on giving everything, absolutely everything. Gale did not even finish reading the contract. She signed it as soon as Mr. Wood said she could. She was not even afraid that there might be traps hidden in the contract terms. It almost seemed like if Mrs. Wood wanted to bring down Mr. Wood, it would be as easy as lifting her finger. And if Mr. Wood wanted to manipulate Mrs. Wood, it would be equally easy. These two trusted each other wholeheartedly. They viewed love as more important than money. Mrs. Wood, you also need to place your fingerprint here, Sonny pointed out. Okay. Shawn stood by watching calmly and tenderly. He had given her everything without reservations. Chapter 2019. In the days to come, even if he is not around, she can still live well and never lack any comforts. The most straightforward way to express love for someone is to give her a lot of money. Tisk tisk, Mrs. Wood. I'll have to curry favor with you from now on. You're now a billionaire, one of the wealthiest women in the country. Is there anything your greatness needs from me? Joe joked. Yes, Gale said. Your wish is my command. Take good care of Summer. If you dare to let her suffer or be unhappy, be careful. I'll fire you, Gale said. Joe covered his heart, looking scared. No, Mrs. Wood, please spare me. I'll serve you wholeheartedly, walk through heaven and hell with you. Aren't you Mr. Wood's subordinate? He's just a figurehead now that he has no shares. He has no real power. Joe grinned. You're the biggest boss of all. Gale nodded seriously. Yes, do well. I won't mistreat you. With me you'll always have a seat at the table. Shawn chimed in. Did you hear that, Joe? From now on, be loyal to her with all your heart. Joe responded repeatedly. Yes. In my career, the first half was for Shawn, the second half will be for Mrs. Wood. You two have squeezed me dry. What? Do you have any grievances? Well, just a little. Gale laughed. Summer is my bestie. If it weren't for me helping you, would you have won over her so easily? Summer was Joe's weakness. Oh dear, I've always remembered this favor. Rest assured, noble Mrs. Wood, I'll serve you wholeheartedly. Joe promised immediately. Gale burst into laughter at his antics. Shawn glanced at him. He's just full of nonsense, what a smooth talker. You make it sound like you're not the same smooth talker yourself. Gale scrutinized Joe carefully. Indeed, men in love behave differently. How are you and Summer getting along? Pretty good. That's good. Gale nodded satisfactorily. I used to see you two bickering. I was worried you'd have constant conflicts after getting together. In the past, we argued to get her attention. Joe touched his nose. Now that she's mine, what's there to argue about? When it was his own woman, he was willing to compromise and let the little things slide. Sonny saw them chatting and laughing happily, and felt it was better to leave. Mr. Wood, Mrs. Wood, the contract has been officially signed. Keep a copy for yourself, one for the legal department, and one for the board to file. Please review, he said. Shawn nodded slightly. Okay. I'll leave now and not disturb you. After Sunny left, Joe rubbed his chin. There was someone else just now, so I couldn't say. Now I can speak freely. Mrs. Wood, I want to ask you something. What? What do you think it would take for Summer to accept my proposal? Gale was surprised. Proposal? So soon? Joe's love confession was still fresh in her mind, as if they had happened yesterday. How could he already be thinking of proposing? So soon? Why do you have the same response as Summer? Joe asked. Of course it's soon. Normally from dating to marriage at least half a year is needed. How long has it been for you? Half a month? Chapter 2020. When you meet the right person and fate comes knocking, why adhere to processes? Joe's greatest wish now was to quickly crown Summer as his wife. Only by seeing her name officially logged in his family register did he feel he truly possessed her, giving him a sense of security. He wanted to marry her. When a man likes a woman, it would be that straightforward, that urgent. So, there was no need for women to wonder whether a man loved her or how much he did. True love is so passionate and fiery, you can feel it clearly. Gale thought for a moment. That's one way to put it, but women tend to overthink things. What doubts? Can you break it down for me? I just can't figure out what you women are really thinking, Joe asked. No matter how successful men were in their careers, they tended to be simple-minded when it came to relationships. Joe frowned deeply as if facing a major dilemma. You say it takes time, but Summer and I have known each other for so many years. I know her temperament, she knows my personality. We've been happy together, and we've adapted well. Why can't we move toward marriage? Of course your honeymoon phase is filled with happiness. But what about after the novelty wears off? Will you continue to love her, protect her, respect her just as before? Gale said, I will. Seeing how Joe sincerely wanted to marry Summer, Gale seriously dispensed advice. After all, it concerned the happiness of her best friend. Joe, love is between two people, but marriage involves two families. If you want to marry her, and she wants to marry you, the first thing you need to do isn't just proposing. It's introducing her to your family. Take her home? Yes. See if your family likes her, accepts her, and is satisfied with her. See if she can integrate into your family and feel comfortable and welcomed. Joe slapped his hand suddenly. Right. How did I not think of this? His mind was filled with thoughts of cozying up with Summer, and they had been living in their own world. He forgot to introduce her to his parents. Gale looked at him disdainfully. Does your IQ drop to 0 when you fall in love? I just lack experience. But you come across like a Casanova. Joe did not understand. What does that mean? He was not familiar with the term. In simpler terms, it means you've dated many women. You've been through the lot and never stuck to one. That's a big misunderstanding. Joe shrugged. I'm a perfectly innocent man. Well, you do give off that vibe. How can you just sling my name through the mud? Joe was helpless and puzzled. I don't get it. How do I give off this Casanova vibe? He scratched his head in confusion, then looked at Shawn. Shawn, you look like the kind of person who will not touch a girl in 800 years. Exactly. Gale nodded repeatedly. Your Casanova vibe is exactly that first impression you give off. That's why you and Summer couldn't have happened earlier, because you seem so flighty. Joe fell silent, his brow furrowing deeply. I'll think it over. I need to plan how to bring her home. She'll definitely feel embarrassed. But every bride must meet her in-laws, right? He said, very focused.